Welcome to another video from the DJpodcast.com. In this video, we're going to be looking at automating the BPM inside of Ableton Live's arrangement view. I've opened up Ableton Live and dropped 2 tracks into my live set. And what I'm going to do is I want to open up the master channels automation lane. So I'm going to open this up here, and you can see that I have it set to mixer song tempo. It's called song tempo, but really it's the overall BPM that you've set up over here in the top left of Ableton Live's interface. So this line here represents that we are currently at 125 BPM. Underneath song tempo, you've got 2 boxes, one that says 60 and one that says 200. 60 is the lowest BPM and 200 is the highest BPM. So if we take this line and drag it all the way down, we'll now be at 60 BPM. If we drag it all the way up, we're now going to be at 200 BPM. When I drag this, the BPM on the top left changes. Obviously, when you're doing a mix, you're not really going to be mixing from tracks that are at 60 to 200. You might be doing something like 128 to 135, or maybe even 128 to 140. To make this simpler and a lot easier to work with, I'm going to go ahead and change the minimum and maximum value. So for this, I'm going to change the minimum to 125, that's the BPM that we're at now, and I'm going to change the maximum to 130. Now, the actual area that we have in this automation lane covers a much smaller BPM range. I found that when I'm automating the BPM, there are generally 2 ways that I want to do this. The first is a very quick swap kind of BPM change. So it will go from one BPM directly to the other BPM. The easiest way to do this is to use the pencil tool, which you can click up here, or you can just hit Apple B or Control B if you're on a PC. Then I'm going to go to the point where I want to change the BPM. So let's say right after this track is faded out, I'm going to drag it to the point that I want to change it to. Then I'm going to go out of the draw mode and get rid of these 2 points. So you can see now that it's at 125 and then it immediately jumps to 130. So take a look up at the top left of the screen, and when I play this, you'll see exactly what happens. There was a quick jump there from 125 to 130 BPM. I like to use this kind of transition when I'm going from one track that is an instrumental to another track that has a vocal coming in. A lot of the times, a vocal section won't have an instrumental behind it. So by changing the BPM very quickly, the listener won't necessarily realize that the BPM change has occurred, and the vocal will come in at the right BPM at the right time. I usually use a automation that goes over time rather than a quick swap. Let's say that I had a transition that goes from bar 33 to bar 65, so a 32 bar transition. I want to have my tempo go from 125 to 130 over the entirety of that length. Because of the length of time that that transition is going to occur, the BPM changes will be very minute. There will just be a lot of them in that time frame. To do this, it's very easy. What you want to do is go and click on the first point that you want to start the transition. We'll start it, let's say, at around 41. And double click to make a point at the particular BPM that you're starting with. Then you're going to want to go to the point where you want to have the new BPM start. So we'll just go a little bit forward to, let's say, 57. Then we're going to click and drag that new point up to the particular BPM that we want. And now we have a transition over time of the BPM. During those 30 seconds, the BPM will be changing by 5, but the listener isn't really going to notice it because it gives enough time for Ableton's time stretching to sink in and go from one track to another. Here's a screenshot of one of my DJ mixes where I use BPM automation. Over the course of 1 hour, I used BPM automation to go from tracks playing at 128 BPM to tracks playing at a much higher BPM, like 138 or 140. Thanks for watching this video on BPM automation inside of Ableton Live's arrangement view. At this point, you should be ready to start making more complex DJ mixes.